영어 원서 읽기 500번 읽기 프로젝트 그 첫 번째 버니큘라입니다. 우리 친구들이 영어 많이 잘하고 싶어 하는데 결국 영어도 한국어와 같은 언어이기 때문에 많이 말하는 사람이 잘하게 되어 있어요. 근데 영어는 우리나라 말이 아니다 보니까 우리가 이렇게 평소에 쓸 기회가 많이 없잖아요. 그래서 잘할 수 있는 방법 중에 하나가 여러 번 읽기입니다. 여러 번 읽기. 그 중에서 마음에 드는 책이 있다면 한번 끝까지 한번 읽어보는 건데, 일본의 그 통역의 신이라고 불리는 분이 있는데, 그분 성함은 어려워서 잘 기억을 못 하겠는데, 같은 책을 500번을 읽었대요. 영어가 가지는 느낌과 그 뉘앙스 그리고 표현들을 잘 이해하기 위해서 500번씩 읽었다고 합니다. 쉬운 일은 아니죠. 물론 이제 몇 번 500번 읽고 나면 그 다음부터는 횟수를 줄여 나가는데 그 나라 언어를 이해하기 위해서는 그 나라 언어를 원어민들이 사용하는 시간만큼이나 많이 그 언어에 접해주면 된다고 하니까 지금부터 저도 원서 500번 읽기에 도전을 해보도록 하겠습니다. 물론 음성으로는 제가 한 30번 정도 올렸어요. 근데 이제 영상으로 한번 제가 도전해 보도록 하겠습니다. 이 책은 버니큘라라고 해서 굉장히 재밌는 책이에요. 시리즈물인데 그중 첫 번째 책이에요. 한번 읽어보도록 할게요. Bunnicula, A Rabbit Tale of Mystery. Editor's note. The book you are about to read was brought to my attention in a most unusual way. One Friday afternoon, just before closing time, I heard a scratching sound at the front door of my office. When I opened the door, there before me stood a sad-eyed, droop-eared dog carrying a large, plain envelope in his mouth. He dropped it at my feet. I gave me a soulful glance, and with great quiet dignity sauntered away. Inside the envelope was the manuscript of the book you now hold in your hands, together with this letter. Gentlemen, the enclosed story is true. It happened in this very town, to me and the family with whom I reside. I have changed the names of the family in order to protect them. But in all other respects, everything you will read here is factual. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Harold. I come to writing purely by chance. My full-time occupation is dog. I live with Mr. and Mrs. X, called here the Monroes, and their two sons, Toby, aged 8, and Pete, aged 10. Also sharing our home is a cat named Chester, whom I am pleased to call my friend. We were a typical American family, and still are, though the events related in my story have, of course, their effect on our lives. I hope you will find this tale of sufficient interest to yourself and your readers to warrant its publication. Sincerely, Harold X. Chapter 1. The Arrival. I shall never forget the first time I laid this now. I shall never forget the first time I laid these now tired old eyes on our visitor. I had been left home by the family with an admonition to take care of the house until they returned. That's something they always say to me when they go out. Take care of the house, Harold. You are the watchdog. I think It's their way of making up for not taking me with them. As if I wanted to go anyway. You can't lie down at the movies and just see the screen, and the people think you are being impolite if you fall asleep and start to snore or scratch yourself in public. No, thank you. I'd rather be stretched out on my favorite rug in front of a nice whistling radiator. But I digress. I was talking about the first night. Well, it was cold. The rain was pelting the windows. The wind was howling, and it felt pretty good to be indoors. I was lying on the rug with my head on my paws, just staring absently at the front door. My friend Chester was curled up on the brown velvet armchair, which years ago he'd staked out as his own. I saw that once again he'd covered the whole seat with his cat hair, and I chuckled to myself, picturing the scene tomorrow. Next to grasshoppers, there is nothing that frightens Chester more than the vacuum cleaner. In the midst of this reverie, I heard the car pull into the driveway. I didn't even bother to get up and see who it was. I knew it had to be my family, the Monroes, since it was just about time for the movies to be over. After a moment, the front door flew open. There they stood in the doorway, Toby and Pete and Mom and Dad Monroe. There was a flash of lightning, and in each glare I noticed that Mr. Monroe was carrying a bundle with tiny glistening eyes. Pete and Toby bounded into the room, both talking at the top of their lungs. Toby shouted, "Put him over here, Dad." "Take your boots off. You're soaking wet," replied his mother, somewhat calmly, I thought, under the circumstances. "But, Mom, what about the—" "First, stop dripping on the carpet." "Would somebody like to take this?" asked Mr. Monroe, indicating the bundle with the eyes. "I'd like to remove my coat." "I will," Pete yelled. "No, I will," said Toby. "I found him. You will drop him." "I will not. You will too." "Mom, Pete punched me." "I'll take him," said Mrs. Monroe. "Take off your coat this minute." But she became so involved in helping the boys out of their coats that she didn't take him at all. My tranquil evening had been destroyed, and no one had even said hello to me. I whimpered to remind them that I was there. "Harold," cried Toby, "guess what happened to me?" And then, all over again, everyone started talking at once. At this point, I feel I must explain something. In our family, everyone treats everyone else with greater respect for his or her intelligence. That goes for the animals as well as the people. Everything that happens to them is explained to us. It's never been just, "Good boy, Harold," or "Use the little box, Chester," at our house. Oh no. With us, it's a, "Hey, Harold, Dad got a raise, and now we're in a higher tax bracket." Or, "Come, sit on the bed, Chester, and watch this Wild Kingdom show. Maybe you will see a relative," which shows just how thoughtful they are. But after all, Mr. Monroe is a college professor, and Mrs. Monroe is a lawyer. So we think of it as a rather special household, and we are, therefore, rather special pets. So it wasn't at all surprising to me that they took the time to explain the strange circumstances surrounding the arrival of the little bundle with the glistening eyes now among us. It seems that they had arrived at the theater late, and rather than trip over the feet of the audience already seated, they decided to sit in the last row, which was empty. They tiptoed in and sat down very quietly, so they wouldn't disturb anyone. Suddenly, Toby, who's the little one, sprang up from his chair and squealed that he had sat on something. Mr. Murnau told him to stop making a fuss and move to another seat. But in an unusual display of independence, Toby said he wanted to see just what it was he had sat on. An usher came over to their row to shush them, and Mr. Murnau borrowed his flashlight. What they found on Toby's chair was the little blanket bundle that was now sitting on Mr. Murnau's lap. They now unwrapped the blanket, and there in the center was a tiny black and white rabbit, sitting in a shoebox filled with dirt. A piece of paper had been tied to his neck with a ribbon. There were words on the paper, but the Monroes were unable to decipher them because they were in a totally unfamiliar language. I moved close for a better look. Now, most people might call me a mongrel, but I have some pretty fancy bloodlines running through these veins, and the Russian wolfhound happens to be one of them. Because my family got around a lot, I was able to recognize the language as an obscure dialect of the Carpathian mountain region. Roughly translated, it read, "Take good care of my baby." But I couldn't tell if it was a note from a bereaved mother or a piece of Romanian sheet music. A piece of Romanian sheet music. Sheet music. The little guy was shriveling from fear and cold. It was decided that Mr. Murnau and the boys would make a house for him out of an old crate and some heavy-duty white mesh from the garage. For the night, the boys would make a bed for him in the shoebox. Toby and Pete ran outside to find the crate, and Mrs. Murnau went to the kitchen to get him some milk and lettuce. Mr. Murnau sat down, a dazed expression in his eyes, as if he were wondering how he came to be sitting in his own living room in a wet raincoat with a strange bunny on his lap. I signaled to Chester, and the two of us casually moseyed over to a corner of the room. We looked at each other. "Well, what do you think?" I asked. "I don't think rabbits like milk," he answered. Chester and I were unable to continue our conversation because a deafening crash commanded our attention. Peter yelled from the hallway, "Ma, Toby broke the rabbit's house." "I didn't. I just dropped it. Peter won't let me carry it. It's too big. It's too big. Toby's too little." "I am not." "You are too." "Okay, fellas," Mrs. Monroe called out as she entered with the milk and lettuce. "Let's try to get it in here with as little hysteria as possible, please." Chester turned to me and said under his breath, "That lettuce looks repulsive, but if there's any milk left, I get it." I certainly wasn't going to argue with him. I'm a waterman myself. At that moment, the crate arrived, barely standing the strain of being pulled in two directions at once. "Ma, Toby says he's gonna keep the rabbit to his room. That's not fair. Harold sleeps in his room. Only sometimes, I thought. When I know he's got a leftover ham sandwich in his drawer. Toby's a nice kid. Don't get me wrong, but it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt that he shared his stash with me. It was, after all, at one of those late night party, at one of those late night parties in Toby's room that I first developed my taste for chocolate cake. And Toby, nothing my preference, has kept me in chocolate cake chocolate cake ever since. Pete, on the other hand, doesn't believe in sharing, and the only time I tried to sleep on his bed, he rolled over on me and pinned me by my ears so that I couldn't move for the rest of the night. I had a crick in my neck for days. But he's mine, Toby said. I found him. You sat on him, you mean? I found him, and he's sleeping in my room. You can keep Smelly all Harold in your room, and the Chester too, if you want to. But I'm gonna keep the rabbit in mine. Smelly old Harold? I would have bitten his ankle, but I knew he hadn't changed his socks for a week. Smelly, indeed. Mr. Murnau spoke up. I think the best place for the rabbit is right here in the living room, on that table by the window. It's right there, and he will get lots of fresh air. Peter's taller than I am, Toby cried. He will be able to see the rabbit better. Too bad, Squirt. Okay, said Mrs. Monroe through clenched teeth. Let's put him to bed and make him comfortable, and then we can all get some sleep. Why? Pete asked. I don't want to go to sleep. Mrs. Monroe smiled a little too sweetly at Pete. Look, Ma, said Toby. He's not drinking his milk. Chester nudged me in the ribs. Didn't I tell you? He asked. Excuse me while I make myself available. Hey, said Toby. We gotta name him. Can that wait until tomorrow? Asked Mr. Monroe. The boys shouted in unison. No, he has to have a name. He has to have a name right now. I have to say I agreed with them. It took them 3 days to name me, and those were the 3 most anxious days of my life. I couldn't sleep at all, worrying that they were really going to call me Fluffy, as Mrs. Monroe had suggested. Well, all right, sighed Mrs. Monroe. What about, say, Bun Bun? Uh-oh, there she goes again, I thought. Where did she get them? Yuck, we all said. Well, then, how about Fluffy? She offered hopefully. Pete looked at his mother and smiled. You never give up, do you, Ma? Meanwhile, Chester, who had also been named Fluffy for a short time, was rubbing against Mrs. Murner's ankles and purring loudly. No, Chester, not now, she said, pushing him aside. He wants to help us name him, don't you, Chester? Toby asked, as he scooped him up into his arms. Chester shot me a look. I could tell this was not what he had in mind. Come on, Harold, Toby called. You've got to help with the name, too. I joined the family, and the serious thinking began. We all peered into the box. It was the first time I had really seen him. So that is your rabbit, I thought. He sort of looks like a Chester, only he's got longer ears and a shorter tail, and a motor in his nose. Well, said Pete, After a moment, "Since we found him at the movies, why don't we call him Mr. Johnson?" There was a moment of silence. "Who's Mr. Johnson?" asked Toby.